Hey, everybody. This looks a little bit different than our other recordings that we have done before, and that's because we're actually all here in person. We spent the last few days meeting and mapping out what the rest of this year looks like and the long-term plans for Find Out. And along with that, we decided to do 2 in-person recordings because usually we are in 3 or 4 different states, and actually we had never met before. So what you're about to see is one of the first times that we have ever met in person. And we actually ended up having a really powerful conversation about stigmas around mental health and things that we can do to lower that so more people get the help they need. We also have some laughs in there because, of course, we can't take ourselves too seriously. And we also talk about some classes that we think would actually be great for kids to have to go through before they graduate college and actually improve their lives. So with that, take a look, let us know what you think, and enjoy.
Hi, and welcome back to the Find Out podcast. And you could see we still act the same way, even in person, that we do on Zoom call, except more touching, I guess.
And more beer.
And more beer.
Well, same
well,
amount.
yeah, you just don't see it.
Right.
So on this episode, we're going to dive into a few topics. The first one we're going to talk about is what class do you wish they taught in school? And we're talking K through 12, not college. Mandated class that you have to take, like you have to take, math classes, science classes, all these things. So we want to talk about like what is a class you wish you had that would have actually prepared you for life.
And our listeners in I think Oklahoma, they have Bible study now included in that lesson. So
Yeah,
Trump
Bibles.
Yep.
Trump Bibles.
Trump Bibles.
Also learning about the fact that Donald Trump did lost or did not lose the election.
Yeah, it's fact. They got to look for the discrepancies that don't exist.
They're doing that.
That's for real?
Yeah. Ryan Walters, the state superintendent.
Yep.
What?
Second.
So we've all talked about it a little bit before. So 2 of us have the same one, which is Zach and I. So I'm going to let Zach talk about it first.
Personal finance, 100%. And one state, I don't want to compliment this guy because I fucking hate him, but Ron DeSantis has it in Florida where it's a mandated high school thing. I think it's the only good thing Ron DeSantis.
We were just talking about how I needed to scoot away from you.
The Republicans going to get into.
There are a number of ways you could have introduced that didn't involve Ron DeSantis.
Yep.
That's fine. All right.
I'm only saying because one state actually does do it already.
Let's just move past this part.
Let's move past that part. Yeah, no more complimenting Ron DeSantis. But if I had known all the shit I know now as a 37-year-old when I was 18, I probably literally could have saved 10 years of strife in my life because when I first got my credit card, I was 18 years old. My first credit card had $1,000 limit. It's free money. That's what it felt like when I was a kid. It's free money in my hand. Spent it. I think I probably got 90 days, 120-day late payments on that thing so many times.
Oh, yeah.
My credit was below 600 for like the first 10 years of me being an adult. Completely screwed me over. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. I've eventually figured out how to be a human being, but I had no context as to what.
No thanks to school, right?
Exactly. And if in school I'd learned what are the fundamentals of credit, how do you manage any of your money in your life? Because I was a poor spender during all that time. Like every single element of my life up until I was like 27 was like, don't ask me about money. You will lose your life in the end if you're going to rely on me. It's not going to happen. So personal finance, I think could go a huge, not only just for like people managing their lives, but just in the sense of like the economy. I think the economy would do so much better if we had people who were aware of how finance works from the jump, getting out into the world and they know how to manage their credit. I mean, we would not have the same debt problems. It would have a huge cascade effect.
So you're saying something like 12 trillion in outstanding credit card debt across America is a problem?
Just a little. Yeah.
One thing that I don't know that I could have been taught when I was a kid was what compounding interest actually is. Like I could intellectually understand it. I could write in a graph. I could, do the like actual, fucking multiplication, and I could conceptualize it, but I couldn't internalize it.
That's the funny thing because we do that in economy or economics. God, I can't even talk. You do like the stock market game. So we learn how to lose money on dumb risks, but we don't learn how to balance your checkbook or like manage cash flow or understand what happens if you lose your money or if you borrow a bunch of money and then you just ignore it like it's going to go away.
So I actually did take this class. So I wanted to be blue collar. Like I was one of those kids I could take any test. Scantron was my favorite fucking thing. Like I could ace any test, never did anything else. That's who I was in high school, which meant no homework, meant the teachers fucking hated me. I hated school. So in I don't know if it's a Long Island thing or if it's a New York thing, but we have this program called BOCES, which I don't know what it stands for. It's basically blue collar for kids who don't like school. So I wanted to go into construction or really architecture, and then they kept canceling classes until I ended up building cabinets in high school. Not the plan. But in order to do the blue collar shit, I had to learn all of the stuff that everybody should have learned. So I learned the very basics, but the basics of accounting. I learned how to balance a checkbook and all that type of thing. Back when, we were actually writing in our checkbook the balance.
I remember that.
Which
Fun
I
fact,
don't think anybody does
never written a
anymore.
check.
You've never written a check your whole life?
Wow.
I have a checkbook, never written one.
Really?
Okay.
Never had to.
I mean,
See,
the world is changing. You don't
Yeah.
usually need like.
I mean, I very rarely do it now, but I think that with the personal finance thing, a lot of things about education, and we talked to Congressman Pat Ryan about this the other day, was that like sometimes there's a split between the people who are looking for debt relief from college loans and like the people who are more on the blue collar track. And there's this disconnect because it's like, why are you getting relief and I'm getting nothing? I feel like personal finance is one that everybody would benefit from. It would help the country, and it would save a lot of kids like yourself. And I've heard the story of friends of my own that literally got themselves into tens of thousands of dollars of debt and then are paying like a 25 to 30% interest rate on top of that. It's impossible to get out of it. And so like, right. And it just sets you, like you said, set you back like 10 years. And like taking one class like senior year or whenever, like seems like a logical thing to have people do. Like my mom is a teacher, so it's not gonna be great for me to say. I didn't like school either. And my issue was I always bristled at the things that I was forced to do that I could not figure out why I was doing it. And math was one of them. I struggled at math, and I would ask my like calculus teacher, like, why do I need this? Tell me how I'm going to use this in my practical life. And the answer is you don't. What it does do though is it makes you think critically, and it like pushes you, and it like helps you with problem solving and things like that. I wish someone had just told me that. But I think like, learning about, like you said, balancing a checkbook, like a credit card is not free money. In fact, it's quite a dangerous thing to give an 18-year-old, and gets a lot, like thousands, if not millions of Americans out of debt at like 25, right? Like the fact that they're having to spend their 20s digging out,
Or they never get in debt in the first place because they
know how it works.
go straight into the workplace. And even if they make less money over like the lifetime earnings, you're starting out with a green light, basically debt free. And you can just, as long as you understand credit, cash flow, and how to manage your finances. So you could, I think it should be like maybe every year, just a required class and through high school at least.
Yeah.
But you could start. I remember kids carrying around a loaf of fucking flour. That's what you call it, right? A bag of flour, calling it a baby, so that they could learn how to be a mom and a dad, and baking cakes.
No.
And then they call it home economics, and I'm like, it's an elective where you learn how to bake, but you're
Sew a
not going
little
to
bit,
talk
maybe.
about your credit score. Like that's kind of the macro home economics conversation. And we're like, nah, that's probably not important. But a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Yeah.
Required learning.
So I was a terrible student when I was in high school and everything. It was in fourth grade. I remember the day that I stopped doing my homework. I had a legitimate excuse for my homework not getting done, and I never did homework again.
Like never?
I never did
Not
homework.
one
again.
single time?
From
Not
fourth
once.
grade on?
How did you pass anything?
Because I aced
I failed the
absolutely
test.
everything that I took.
I was very
And they
similar.
could not fail me.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm higher scores than anybody else in the class.
Yeah.
You can't fail me.
What about like writing papers? Did you write papers at home or between
I'd
classes?
write in
or-
between classes.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was the same way as you. I remember in 7th grade, I think it was, I handed in my homework. It was like all crumpled and messed up, but I handed it, and the teacher just sat there and went, "That's fifth. I can't believe it." And the whole class gave me a round of applause. So I completely relate to that.
When I think same grade, I had my cat. I had like a poster some sort of project with a poster, and my kitten took it and tore the shit out of it. And I went
That's a
into
really
class and I was like, my cat ate my homework. And this teacher was like, and I just remember feeling like the biggest fucking asshole ever. I was like, I can't, like, yes, it's
It
real. I
actually
know it
happened.
sounds fake, but like this cat actually ate my fucking homework.
That's crazy.
All right, Luke, what you got?
Religions of the world.
Oh,
Like I grew up super small town. There's like 2 black kids in my entire school. The only religion that happened anywhere around Christianity. There was various different strains of it, but it's the only one. And every other religion was viewed as lesser or like
Weird.
heretical or weird is a really good way of putting it. Like, oh, I can't believe you'd think that.
Wrong.
Wrong. Yeah, that's like another way of good. And I feel like a class taught at some point in high school where it's like, yeah, by the way, all these other religions have just as much history as this one that you've been taught is the one. So like, it's okay to have your view of what you think it is, but like, they have the same right to think whatever their thing is the right one, and you having your thought does not put you above them.
Do you think you could implement that in a small town, though?
I mean, it would be tough, but at the same time, they just don't learn about it. Sure. Like, I came to college with no idea about like Islamic culture or Jewish culture, really. Like, and those are like the 3 biggest religions in the world. I still know practically nothing about any of the other ones, and I want to learn more. But like, even college isn't like super big on teaching.
Not really. I think it's a great idea, and I think one of the best experiences I had growing up was that my town in Maine had a sister city relationship with a village in Japan.
Oh,
Because where I grew up, Bath, Maine, is a big shipbuilding community and has been for about 200 years. So 100 and something years ago, one of the Bath ships was wrecked off the coast of this village called Shariki, which has now been, the name has changed. But and they saved a bunch of the sailors. So there's always been an exchange program between Bath and it was Shariki at the time. And I knew nothing about. I mean, I'm from a small town from Maine. Like, I mean, we didn't. I don't even know if we had 2 people of color in my school. Like, it was really that small, and it just opened my eyes. And this was as a freshman. Like, I spent 2 weeks over there with a family. I lived there. They didn't speak any English or very, very little. Yeah, and I just realized it was such a powerful experience for me because I was learning about these people that I didn't know anything about, really. And I actually was even there on, I think it was the 50th anniversary of Hiroshima, which I learned afterwards, which I was like, that's a little, but like never knew anything. But it was, but you know, and I've also worked at the State Department in an internship where we brought upcoming leaders from other countries to the United States so that they would have a better opinion of the United States. It's the same idea with this, like learning that, you know, most religions have a framework of the similar ideas, right? There's different names and whatever, but like, I think we would be a much more empathetic world if people were exposed to more things than the one thing that they know.
Well, that's the
especially
problem.
like comparing the similarities, because everybody's so focused on, oh, here's the fucking differences, and like the 3 big Abrahamic religions are really fucking similar.
Extremely.
Yep.
Well, and that's I mean that's the threat. That's why you can't say Happy Holidays. You have to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Because everything in this is the point. Everything is framed as an attack on Christianity by the right, and it's only a tiny segment of actual Christians who believe that everything is an attack on Christianity. Right. But they take that and then they try to just say, well, if you're a Christian, there's only one way to be a Christian, and that is to behave like this and this and this and this. And one of those things is the people who would say, by teaching children that other religions exist and putting them on a level playing field, or even talking about them objectively in context with Christianity, which in their opinion is by far the superior religion, they would view that immediately as an attack on Christianity and that you're trying to spread, you know, heathen beliefs or whatever I don't even know where they would go with it. They just make shit up.
There's all these motherfuckers that want the Bible in school and taught as fact. And I promise you, if you make the same argument, all right, put the Quran in school, teach it the same way, they will lose their fucking mind.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a clip from I don't know if it's Borat or one of these characters that what's his face plays, and he goes into a small rural America town, and he's like, we have this amazing like business. It's going to completely change the economy here. All this. And he pulls down this thing, and it's a giant photo of a mosque. And they're like, we're going to put it right here. And the people lose their minds.
I saw that.
They lose their minds.
Crazy. It was so good.
It's such a great, like, and he's like, well, we're going to, you know, like, maybe there'll be Sharia law, maybe not. And these people are just like fucking exploding. But because they don't, you know, these people don't know.
No, they know nothing about it. They know nothing about it.
So I grew up in Long Island, and in the world that I grew up in, yes, it's New York. And like, yes, I had access to the city and it's incredibly diverse, but the world that I grew up in, like suburban, like white suburbia, Nassau County, just out, it's the county next to Queens. When I grew up, you were Catholic or you were Jewish.
Yep.
And if you were Catholic, you were either Italian or you were Irish. Those were the only identities that I really grew up with. Now, I would pass churches that would say Lutheran Church, Baptist Church. Being a Catholic, raised in that church, I just thought it was like the name of the church. I didn't understand that there were different types. I honestly, at the age of 18, did not understand that people took these differences between different types of Christianity really fucking seriously, until I ended up in basic training and I met people from the Midwest who were like, and the South, who like were like, oh, fuck the Lutherans,
Fuck
like
the
right,
Methodists,
like,
fuck the Lutherans, fuck the Baptists. Like they're at each other's throat. The people like,
which is crazy to me. Like
the different
still
flavors
don't
of
have any idea
Christianity
why.
are more anti-Christian than most other people.
Yeah. Well, there's a famous clip of Ricky Gervais, who's like a well-known atheist, on Stephen Colbert, who's a well-known Catholic and very strong, and they have a discussion about whether God is real and religion. And the thing that it has always stuck with me is that Ricky Gervais says, well, I just believe in one less God than you do. Like, you don't believe in 999 gods, and you believe in one. I just don't believe in the 1,000. And it's really true. Like, these people are convinced, because they're taught this growing up, that their way is the best. Everybody else in the world, which is the majority of the world, is wrong, and we're right. And I think having at least a basic knowledge of
what other people believe,
what Islam is about, which is by a very peaceful religion for 99.999% of people who practice it.
just like Christianity
Everybody
is a
has
very peaceful
fundamentalists,
religion
right?
for 99.999%.
Right, but
Like,
there's this fear, right?
Yeah,
Because
there's fear, and it's
of the other or the
of the
unknown.
other. Yeah, yep.
And I think it's great.
And if it wasn't an unknown, the fear wouldn't exist.
Exactly.
And it's not just about making people less religious, even though we're all less religious than maybe the average Republican in the South. But we don't want to make people not religious. We want to help you, I should say, but really make you less crazy, like, to be fair. But when you understand that, like, oh, maybe like Buddhism, I don't know anyone who could possibly find anything to blame or to fault in Buddhism specifically. And there are a lot of religions like that are sort of more decentralized. It's more a way of living, and it's more of a philosophy. Yeah. And I mean, religions cover everything. And when you just accept that, well, I'm still going to be a Christian. I still believe in one God. I still believe in the Father and the Son and the Holy Trinity and all that. The Holy Ghost, I think, is the other part of the Holy Spirit. Yes.
The Jedi Ghost.
Santa Claus is in there somewhere. No Santa Claus. No, come on, guys.
Mine was funnier.
You can still have all of that, but you're going to be just a little bit less crazy about it when you realize that all these other people who believe in all these different religions are maybe not monsters.
Yeah, the freedom
maybe
of
they're
religion
just regular
thing is real.
people who just believe slightly different
See,
versions.
what you're describing is the difference between freedom from and freedom to.
Yeah.
And I feel that the left, progressive, liberal, whatever, our belief is we want the freedom from interference, right? What conservatives, in my opinion, really want is the freedom to act with impunity. The freedom to do things.
Yep.
Like that is why there's the rejection of cancel culture as a concept, which is cancel culture in air quotes because it's not a fucking real thing. It is really just you're dealing with consequences.
Yeah, you do something fucking stupid, people don't like you anymore.
Yeah.
Like, just don't do the stupid thing.
Not saying that like people don't go fucking too far.
Yeah,
right? But like what the right wants is the end of cancel culture entirely, which actually means they want the end of consequences.
Consequence-free culture.
But only for them.
Yeah.
Only for some people.
Oh, of course.
Well, right. If we're, sticking on the religion thing for a second, like, you won't remember this, but like right after 9/11, what did all of the conservatives do? They were like, there was this, like, they wanted to go after Muslims and Islam in general. There was, this is like 25 years ago now, but there was a mosque that was being built in New York City. Fox News lost their absolute minds, and they were like, it is so inappropriate. And what I wish somebody had just said, why? Because there is violence in every religion. What happened on that day was absolutely horrific and barbaric, but most Muslims also agreed with that it was barbaric and horrific. So this, like, again, with the othering, and like you said, they don't want consequences because they want to go after people, right? They want the Muslim ban, which I don't, is that even like implemented, or like he said he was
It
doing it?
did, and then it got rolled back,
Yeah,
and then
it's just
yeah.
like, but like but this is like, I think, again, going back to your original point, like, I don't think that would have as much teeth if people fully appreciated what these other cultures and these other religions are about. And I'm saying that as somebody who grew up Catholic and is nothing now. Like, but it is a real problem, and one of the root causes of, I think, the schism that we sort of have in this country right now.
Well, it's a diversity of thought thing, right? I mean, that's really the key difference between the left and the right. Is the right is very siloed into this one way of thinking about every single thing they do. And
it's all woven together too.
Right. It's simplified to this one simple path. And I think that's why the left has a harder time unifying a lot of the time too, is because we do have diversity of thought. We have different perspectives and different things, and we're not demonized for having those differences. I mean, it happens here and there, but the general tenor underlying with the left is that we should encourage diversity. We should be having these kinds of classes where we're learning everything we possibly can. The more we know, the better we're able to interact with everybody. And like, you can do it in your own life. Like, even my wife and I, we moved to Atlanta like 2 years ago. We moved from a very white Northeast town. I grew up in a very white place. And now we live in a place where we're literally minorities. And we did that by design because I wanted my daughter to be raised around a lot of different people and not grow up going, well, I don't really understand Black culture. It's like, well, yes, you do now because you're
going to learn
it. Right. And but that has been such an amazing shift because I grew up where I think I had 2 Black people in my high school of over 1,000. It's not like I didn't grow up racist. I never had any of that tendency, but I didn't understand Black culture at all. I never was exposed to it. And as I went into the world, I went, if I ever have a kid, she is going to be in every single culture possible, so she doesn't
as much
have
as
to
you
come
can.
up.
Yeah.
Well, and this isn't just about religion, right?
No.
The
It's
racial element,
really
right?
it's
mostly
spreading
a
out.
culture.
Maine
exactly.
is the least diverse state by percentage in the country, and I was in a town of 9,000 people, and like, there was like, the only Jewish person I knew was the guidance counselor, and like, there was a Navy base in the next town over, so every once in a while there would be a person of color there. But like, there's a reason why cities tend to have more liberal policies related to race and religions and sexual orientation, because you're living with all of these groups of people and you have a better understanding. And if you are from small town Maine, for example, and you never leave, you don't get exposed to that. And then all of a sudden you're hearing these voices telling you that those over there are your problem. What else are you going to believe?
Absolutely.
Right?
And like, we went, I think I told this story yesterday to you guys, but not on camera. And we went to North Georgia during, I think, Memorial Day last year. And like, my wife had never really seen like backwoods kind of Republican culture like that before. And she was really taken aback by it and not a fan. And she asked me like, why are they like this? I said, because they don't let anybody in the bubble. They're very comfortable in the spot. And when you come in, it just makes them nervous. And a lot of the hate that they, the party kind of takes advantage of on the right is really just them being scared. Like, they're just scared of things they don't understand.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And if the more they see that it's not something that's dangerous, the more they're going to be able to come to the table. But so much of the right-wing agenda is focused on that fear and stoking that fear. If you let them into your sphere, they're going to fuck you over somehow. It's like, no. I mean, why do you think cities function? It's because that's not how it goes.
And it's because they're afraid that, I mean, it's a control mechanism. Religion, just like a lot of things, it's one of their pillars of control. And if that becomes even just decentralized or challenged at all, then suddenly they can't say, these people are trying to attack your religion. You can't manipulate me with fear of Christianity being attacked because I'm not afraid of any of these other religions.
Right.
Suddenly they lose that whole category. And it's the most deeply personal to most people who, I mean, the people who are controlled by it have been instructed to have it be the most important part of their identity. So even anything that even starts to tiptoe down that path, they know it. And that's why they disingenuously manipulate you with that fear, so that you never even entertain the idea of learning about Islam or Judaism.
Well, we're probably going to have an episode that's fully on religion at some point.
Yeah,
What
I
are we
think so.
talking about?
But I
Monologue.
want to kick it to Chris, because we're still going around the room saying, what is the class?
This was supposed to be like 10 minutes total.
Oh yeah, we're already rocking a half hour into this. I think.
So my course, my required course for high school students would be Economics 101 and 102, micro and macro economics, which I think in prior to going to school, I would not have understood that there's a difference between finance and economics. And when I think that a lot of people think of economics, they think of money, they think of numbers and the stock market and all this. Economics is about incentivized behavior. And that economics 101 and 102, I had took at my community college when I was like 28 or 29. It was the most eye-opening course that I ever took. It helped me understand things like the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Like when I was taught about the sunk cost fallacy, which is basically like you shouldn't just keep doing something because you've already spent so much time trying to fix it or trying to build it or
When
whatever.
you're talking about relationships, or are you talking about economies?
Yeah, so
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
The answer is yes.
so economics 101 and 102, by introducing these logical fallacies for the first time for me, helped me improve all sorts of aspects of my life and understanding how markets move and how markets respond, and that we are not perfectly rational human beings. I when I was in the Army and when I got out of the Army, I was very libertarian. I was very, very much like, don't fuck with me. There shouldn't be, we should have small government. We should, not interfere with the State Department. To me was interference, and the CIA and all that shit was evil because of my experience in the military. Going to Iraq, I saw what American imperialism looked like, and it fucked people up, and there's blowback and all that shit, right? So I came out of that being like, we need to withdraw from all of it. But then when I came into economics 101 and 102, and my professor explained to me about how like libertarianism doesn't work, as libertarian as he was, he's like, doesn't really work because we're not perfectly rational creatures, and we just don't do what the math says.
Right.
We don't act in our best interest all the time. Like, yes, we are inherently, as human beings, as animals, as anything alive, we are inherently selfish, but we make mistakes. We engage in the sunk cost fallacy. Like, we needlessly waste our efforts and our time doing things. And those two classes together, back-to-back semesters, just taught me to identify problems in my own behavior with relationships, with, of course, finances, just in the trajectory of my life. It allowed me to allocate my time and my effort and my attention in more efficient ways that changed my life for the better. The thing that made those two classes, same professor, Professor Frost, or Mr. Frost, the thing that made that class so effective for me was he was a fantastic storyteller. Like, he would tell stories about his kids and how he would teach them economics. So he would tell his kids, like, I learned about economies of scale, which if you told me those 3 words, economies of scale, before that, would have had no fucking idea what that was about. He told me about his kid, go get some toilet paper. We're out of it upstairs. It's in the basement. And the kid would go downstairs and would grab 6 rolls of toilet paper. There's only need to go put one on the rack. Come up with 6 rolls of toilet paper, and he'd go, what? I just told you to bring 1 toilet paper. And he'd say, economies of scale, because that meant that he didn't have to go back down 6 times.
Right.
And that lesson from Mr. Frost's kids, like, that stuck with me. And that guy was such a brilliant teacher because every lesson he would just tell you a story about a regular human interaction that didn't have to do with factories and, all this complex shit.
Republicans would call that indoctrination.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, I always had the teachers that I always enjoyed the most were the ones that did that. I had a biology teacher, and again, I said I was not the best. Like, history and English, great. Math, science, not so much for me. But I had a biology teacher who was just really engaged and really like she brought it to real world situation where I could understand. I understand how these pieces work now, and it makes a big difference. Your class, though, I would say, going back to this, is the right thing we should do, but conservatives will never allow us to do it.
Not in a
because
million years.
It will destroy all of their arguments about the fact that trickle-down economics does not work. We've done it 50 times, and it doesn't work. And then on the other side of it, where they like to demonize poor people, the most economic stimulating thing you can do is food stamps.
Yep.
And they hate that because they want to talk about that as a handout. It's like, no, if you actually want to put money into the system while also feeding people at the same time, like that, all of that money is going back in. It's the complete opposite of giving billionaires money when they just put it in their pocket.
Yep. Are you saying that Republicans wouldn't like people to learn what progressive taxes are?
That would be that.
Because
exactly
I mean,
not a fan.
progressive taxes sound really evil to me.
Right.
So far, I think all 3 classes we've got here would be immediately vetoed by the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
Not in a million fucking years.
Right. But they want to teach the Bible in school.
Well, yeah, they want to keep you dumb, broke, and Jesus loving.
They'll take the teeny piece of your class, and then the rest of it they'll throw out.
Just the Christian.
Just the Christian part.
If people understood the sunk cost fallacy, what would that do to the lottery sales?
Oh yeah.
Fuck.
Just lottery, like whole states pay for whole things with lottery ticket revenue. Talk about regressive taxes, which progressive taxes. Talk about regressive taxes. You're taking the most desperate people and letting them chase a sunk cost. This idea that it's the same thing
One
at
more spin.
casinos. If I just get a little bit more in, eventually this will pay off. And I'm like, dude, you make $12,000 a year, and you're buying scratch tickets that best case scenario pay out $8,000. You know, if you hit the jackpot. Yeah. And then half of that's going to go in taxes, but sure, keep chasing that, you know, and but those dollars are paying in some cases for education budgets, and I mean they're paying for infrastructure because they don't want people who have money to pay for those.
So Mr. Frost used to call the lottery the idiot tax. I don't play the lottery.
No. Well, have you ever turned a lottery card or ticket around to the other side? Because they are, in most states, they're legally obligated to put the odds on the back.
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
And so, like, I remember, like,
well, what's an odd? I don't even know what that means.
I think, yeah, and I think it says somewhere. I remember one. It was like your odds of winning were like 1 in 45 million. It's not even a needle in a haystack.
No.
It's like a needle on the moon or something.
Better
and
chance
like,
of being hit by lightning.
Yeah. Oh,
Literally.
or being eaten by a shark or a fish.
I mean, a shark is a fish, right?
That's true. So we got 3 classes that Republicans won't let us have.
Let's see if Rich can bring us home with one.
Do we think you've got one?
I think that no, mine is logic. Yes. And this is because most people, I took this for 1 semester in college, and it was like, this is the whole thing? This is a whole topic of conversation? Just like you did maybe proofs in geometry class, which nobody likes.
Fucking hate proofs.
Same.
Just like a Republican engineer would use systems to build a software program that functions correctly or that makes decisions for you correctly, just like how AI models are built. Everything that is correct is built on a system of thought, a system of integrity, and you can actually learn that in how you form opinions on things in the world. And most people are like, well, no, it's a deeply held belief. Okay, fuck off with or get fucked, as Luke would say. I love your deeply held beliefs. Now reverse engineer the logical structure that supports your deeply held belief so that it is defensible. And so in a logic class, you would learn the actual logical fallacies that people create. Like, well, I have a PhD in economics, so go buy all the lottery tickets, which is a appeal to authority, I believe. I should have researched this, but this is what happens. There are so many documented fallacies. Obviously, the bandwagon fallacy is something that Republicans love.
Non sequitur.
Everybody's doing it. The non sequitur, the slippery slope. I mean, you hear a slippery slope fallacy every single day in the news. If we this, then some ridiculous thing like people are going to want to marry animals.
If you put the Quran in school, every student will become Muslim.
Right, and you're like, okay, there are about 700 separate decisions that would have to take place at your level, at your desk, before you got to that point. But
straw man, they like that one too.
The straw man fallacy, the red herring. I mean, so you can just learn all of these things, and instead of learning them with an intent to weaponize them in an argument, you can learn them so that you can then deconstruct your own opinions and beliefs and go, oh shit, I just think that because everyone in my family thinks that.
Right.
There is an actual correct way to build a great argument that is super defensible, and then when you get into that debate, you're not losing your shit because your identity is being threatened. You're going back to, okay, I unpacked this myself and I rebuilt it structurally. And so this is why I believe this. And at any point in any level of that thinking, somebody can come at it and say, well, that layer is broken. And then it's not your identity, it's just the argument, and you're rebuilding the argument more soundly. And it puts everything you believe at arm's distance, because you have a objective, healthy relationship with your opinions. And you could teach this, maybe in a year or two in high school, so that when people are getting ready to go and vote and criticize policies, criticize candidates, they can form their opinions based on real things and facts.
You mean opinions shouldn't be fucking coin tosses, right? And what your dad says?
However you feel about it on any given day, it's insanity. And I think, debate would go hand in hand with that, where you have to be able to defend multiple positions, or at least dissect your opponent's argument because you already revisited you visited that argument in the first place.
Because there's like the speech and debate team in high school. I was on it, and like they demonize the fuck out of that. Where it's like, oh, you're a nerd for being able to think. It's like, oh, okay.
And it's all an elective or extracurricular.
It's not a core.
It's shit that you've got to take like the debuff of in high school. Where it's like you're in speech and debate, ick. Like, oh no.
And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where only the kids who are willing to criticize their own thoughts take it. And I'm like, you're the least of my concerns.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The people who have a visceral reaction.
It's crazy how the Venn diagram of kids who do well on like standardized tests and kids who do speech and debate is basically a fucking circle.
Yeah.
So I went from Nassau Community College in Long Island to Columbia University, and the very first class that I took, like very first classroom that I walked into, was very memorable because I'm a vet. Some habits die hard. I show up super fucking early to this fucking thing. I'm sitting there in a fucking dorky, like not really nice fucking sweater, front fucking row.
Did you have a pocket protector?
Sitting there, I don't like pockets on my chest, but otherwise probably. So I'm sitting there by myself for 10 minutes. The first young girl who walks in, she's 10 years younger than me. She walks in and she goes, "Hi, professor," and I'm like, "Oh no!" Fuck. I'm like, "Yeah, all right, oh, cool." But anyway, so methods and problems of philosophical thought was a logic course, and seeing the logical arguments broken down into I don't know how to describe it. It's like broken down into symbols, and learning about like the if this then that kind of structure has helped me write our budget for this podcast. Sure. Like learning about if this then that structures,
if else statements, man. Computer science
helped me learn how to do very, very complex fucking budgeting, 10 years later. So one of the required classes at my school was like a music course. It was I was never a musical person. Like I like hard rock. That's as deep as I really got. Like, yeah, I like some bands and shit, but was never super, super, super into it. When I took an actual music course, I saw kind of like the connection between early math and science as it developed during like the Enlightenment with the development of different instruments and music. But for that, I wouldn't like Kendrick Lamar. Like I would not like the most popular music in the world if not for understanding and listening to the music, the mathematical structure of
the lyrics and
of his lyrics and the beat and everything. And I am sad that the vast majority of Americans will never take a course like that.
What's really amazing about music, I did not know this was going to come up, but that it was timely because my wife and daughter are both taking piano lessons right now, and they're learning music theory in the process, and it's so fun to watch. Because I'm a musician, but I play the drums, so I'm kind of a half of a musician, I think. I identify, I can't say that, never mind. I am a musician.
Oh, jeez.
Cut that. So they're learning about the relationships between notes and that it is a mathematical relationship. And we were talking about this, and people might not fully understand this, but it is literally a physical relationship in wavelengths that makes notes either harmonize or not harmonize, and sometimes you don't want them to sound. Sometimes you want them to sound evil or sad. Those are mathematical relationships in the physical world, playing out directly into your brain, and your brain is either computing them or not computing them and feeling very angsty. Those things are all purposeful and by design with the really good composers, obviously. And when you see that, I mean, it's to the point of how we got to this part of the conversation. It is a system. It is a logical system created purposefully for a specific outcome. And it doesn't have to, in art, it's beautiful because it doesn't have to be an outcome that can stand on its own. It can be an outcome that is purposefully disheveled and frustrating.
If anybody's going to go down a YouTube rabbit hole, this is the one.
That is cool.
Like learning about how different wavelengths, different types of sounds are either harmonious or discordant.
Yep.
Like, I now better understand why certain music appeals to me when I'm feeling different ways.
It is so cool.
And like, to know that there's a science to it. It's not just emotion.
Like, it's chemical.
Yeah, you're right. It's chemical. It's physical.
It elicits a chemical response in your brain.
And this is, and I wouldn't know this, I think, but for going to the school that I did, the relationship between the developments of math and physics and chemistry and all of these discoveries, like, music evolved over time because of math and science.
Yep.
And math and science, I think, benefited from the way that music was developing over time.
And they've proven that kids who take music classes on average score better in math and science classes. Not because, I mean, it might be correlated because they're coming from a specific type of family, of course, or a specific cultural background, but also because music passively stimulates the part of your brain that is responsible for the structures and the logic that support math and science. Yeah. So you don't even realize it, but your brain is activating and tapping into the same parts, whether you're doing one or the other. So if you're writing a piano medley or melody, or you're playing the drums, and then you go into math and science, you feel like you're doing two different things, but you're actually using the same parts.
If you listen to music, listen to the same music, like while you're studying and while you take the exam at the same time, it can improve test results.
Really?
I wish I knew that.
I used to listen to the Breaking Bad theme while I studied chemistry, and then I listened to it while I took my chemistry stuff.
It's really funny because you're saying maybe it depends on families. I'll give you a perfect example of my family. So my brother is 2 years younger than I am. We are very, very different. I'm much more extroverted. He's much more introverted, but he's also an engineer, and was very, very smart, like top of his class, math, science, and he's also a musician. Yep. He picked up guitar relatively easily. My dad played guitar. A little bit of piano. He plays bass, like all these things. And then I look at it and it doesn't make any sense to me. Though it's interesting. I've gotten my dad's piano, one of them, after he passed away, and my wife has even watched me sort of noodling around, and she's like, "You actually understand this a lot better than you think, just from being in that world a little bit." I mean, I still can't do an actual song, but can do little bits of things. But it is really fascinating how those things are really related.
So we can, I think, get into the next level of the conversation, which, it comes out of education pretty well, because what we wanted to talk about was messaging and the two components of messaging. And this was something I learned in marketing communications throughout my education and my career. And that's that there are two components to a message, and that is, one is how it's delivered, and one is what the message is literally. So you can call it like the message and the delivery, or there's lots of ways to think about it. But essentially it's the what and the how. Mm-hmm. What it is you're saying and how you say it. And when you split it apart, you start to see all of the different ways that it plays out across cancel culture, and can you say, we feel like we can't say the right thing, and making comedy funny again. There are a lot of ways to take it, but splitting that apart in terms of Democrats versus Republicans is really, really interesting. Mm-hmm. Zach, I know you have a strong opinion about, I think
Zach and a strong opinion?
I think
no way.
Any of us in a strong opinion, 100 guys versus a strong opinion. Actually, we would win that instantly.
Yeah.
I never met an opinion that wasn't strong. You have a strong opinion, obviously, about the messaging around the 2024 campaign, but really more broadly around the Democratic message and how we've failed. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
I mean, I think
just a little tiny bit.
Just a little teeny bit. I mean, look, just to broaden out to what you're saying, I think it's very clear. Republicans tend to focus on how they deliver the message, and they always keep it hyper simple. Everything they do is just designed to make it as easy to understand as humanly possible. And it's almost like the music conversation where, on the surface, even a song that seems really simple, there's a lot of complexity underneath it. They ignore all that complexity. They don't give a shit about that because it confuses people who are not there to learn the full scope of the issue. They just want to get a visceral response and go, yes, that's what I want to do. And Democrats on the other side of it, they want to explore that complexity. They want to dive into why does the song sound this way? Why did they choose these particular chords? Why are these instruments in it? Why are these not in it? That's how they would look at that question. And I think that Democrats in 24 spent way too much time focusing on how things are going to work, why they're going to work, what are we going to do, and zero time delivering that message in a way that was resonant to people who just wanted a simple answer to a simple question in their mind, which is how can I have more money? How can I be safer? How can I be more prosperous? Whatever it may be, that to me was the undoing of this whole thing because like I think if you zoom out and look at what Democrats actually offer, what Republicans actually offer, most people would want what Democrats offer.
Yeah.
There's no question. Like it's not even close.
And even when you talk to some like Republicans who think of themselves that way, if you message it as like, yeah, look at these things that you can get, that you need, they go, oh, fuck yeah, I'd want that. And then you go, oh, it's a Democrat, and they lose their fucking
That's why
shit.
Trump and Sanders had carryover voters.
For sure.
Because they are selling the same thing just differently.
Do you remember when people thought Obamacare and Affordable Care Act were two different things?
Oh my God.
And Affordable Care Act had a really high approval rating, and they were like, but fuck Obamacare. And you're like, tell me more about Obamacare.
But I also just do think like we got into like I think people next to us to the bar next to last night were just like these guys are just like we're just gonna listen to them fight about this stuff.
Yeah.
I think you even reached over like are we being too loud for you because you know this is intense. But we were arguing about pretty much exactly this, and my argument was more about because I'm a moderate. There's no question. I'm hands down the most moderate here. I know it's gross. But
I need to wash my hands.
a lot of the things the left does pushes away moderates even because it's the way in which they pitch their arguments comes across as like you try to twist it to be something it's not. Like I think we were talking about immigration at the time, and the
We don't need to go back into that.
No, I'm not going to jump into that in depth.
Yeah, that's going to send us down a different
give
path.
the
Another
context-
3 hours.
I'm ready.
Just to give the context of it, when we were debating, like the issue at hand was what should the policy at the border be, and instead of debating, you know, what should the process be, the fundamentals of it, it started to turn to like, well, this is a racist policy, and my argument was it may be to have policy at the border, it may be considered like if you dive into it, there could be racist elements to it, but even moderate voters look at that and go, don't change the subject, let's focus on the subject at hand. And I think Democrats have a hard time with that too. When they start to feel like they're being challenged, they pivot to go, oh, hey, hold on. There's racism. It's like, yeah, okay, but only Democrats care about this. Republicans certainly don't care about it. And moderates look at it and go, well, stay on subject. So I think there's a lot Democrats need to learn about how they deliver their message. It's not to say that you can't deliver a message about racism and equality. Pick the moment for it. That's the issue that I think Democrats really run into a wall with a lot of the time.
And I think it's been a long time that it took us to get here. I said that in the worst possible way. That it took us a long time to get to this point. But if you look back, you know, people ask about like FDR, would we even elect a man in a wheelchair right now?
Yeah.
You look at JFK, who I don't want to say for better or worse because it was for better. JFK was an amazing president, but he was handsome and eloquent, and that was kind of a double-edged sword because we got real used to seeing a smart, eloquent person on television, and he said the right things, but he also brought that other piece right as television became a thing, and we started carrying more back to the subject of the conversation, which is like the what versus the how.
Yeah.
We went from caring 90% about the what and 10% about the how to now we have a reality TV show like Jerry Springer, fucking trash guy,
Dumpster fire.
celebrity host, as president because we're at like 99% of the what or of the delivery, and 1% about the policy. And Democrats are so frustrated about it because we are still listening for the policies, and so we say he's saying literally racist things right now. He's saying shit that Nazis said, and they go, yeah, but he speaks his mind. He's saying it how I like it. They're not even talking or thinking about the policies.
No, not at all.
Because they're like, well, it resonates with me how he delivers, and so we have to be more mindful of that and understand that they're eating our lunch because they package it in a way that's very palatable. And we're still packaging it in a way that's like, here, let me show you the math. And that is not what Americans are asking for right now.
That's actually a great point, too, because like a lot of the time, like the language we use to define them is like racist or fascist or things like that. And just because of what you're saying, the fact that the way it's packaged, they like it. They don't like it. I mean, some like it because it's racist and fascist, but most are not thinking that way in any way, shape, or form. They're just going, oh, I like this guy's delivery.
Like how he makes me feel.
They like it. They like it. It's Amazon. That's what it is. It's fast.
Yep.
It comes in an easy to open box, and you open it, and you're like, oh, there's my thing.
So
We're done.
I look
They
at
don't
this,
think about anything else.
I look at it a little bit differently, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. The messaging and all of the delivery is very, very important. But from a comms and marketing perspective, the brand, I think the Democratic brand is just so badly damaged right now because of a lot of the things that we've been talking about, right? Or like, sometimes we say one thing and do another, or like, we dive to, or we don't deliver. And if you look at the last 30, 40 years and you say, what are the two best brands on both sides? It's Donald Trump with Make America Great Again, and it's Barack Obama with Yes, We Can. And if you went to those rallies and I've been to, not the Donald Trump ones, but I've been to the Obama ones. Like,
I thought I was about to find
I got
out
it, but
something really interesting.
but it's almost like a concert, right? And it's like it's not a concert because you're really excited that he's got a public option within the ACA, right? It's because of how it's the vision for the future and like the world that you want to live in. And it's the same with the Republicans. Like, Make America Great Again, they have this completely bullshit narrative that like all we need to do is to go back to the time when America was great. Now, when you ask them what time and period of time,
they can never
can do it, or they'll say the 1950s, to which I'll say, okay, well,
what about women and black people?
Well, but the top tax rate was 90%.
Yeah.
And there was massive discrimination, legal discrimination.
Yep. But that's all the what? Like,
right,
you're getting
but I'm getting into it because
Exactly.
I'm doing the Democratic thing where I'm talking about the thing. But like the vision of the 50s, the white picket fence, the like 2.5 kids, it's quiet, the milkman's coming, the vapor's being thrown on, and it elicits a reaction. And I think whoever wins next is going to have to put that vision together. And I would actually argue that the vision is probably going to matter more than the actual policies.
For sure. I mean, it's really just a question of like, how easy can you make my life? That's
I don't think I want to hear the word tax rate from a Democrat.
No, just never. I don't want to get into the.
No, I mean, yeah. That's a better way of saying I want to hear it, but I don't want to hear it at a campaign, at a rally.
And that's exactly it. You don't say we're going to raise taxes on the rich. You say we're going to make America great. And then when you go away and you do the math, the only fucking way that you can make America great is by making sure that the people creating the wealth are as close to the fucking wealth as possible. Yeah. And that is the fucking workers of America. That's for sure. Through correct wages and correct benefits, which unions used to provide, and now there's nothing left. And so they're like, hey, how about guns and religion? Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's no different. Like, the only way that Trump could pay for this fucking tax cut was by cutting Medicare. Like, that was the only.
But he's still not paying for it.
Yeah, they're still raising the ceiling. But like the only
$5 trillion.
and the only
5.3 trillion.
Like, you say that and you go, yeah, the only mathematical way he can do it is by cutting this. And they go, well, that's not true. And it's like, you're arguing with math.
Right.
The only math.
It's not true because he's making America great.
Right, but we've already lost when we're doing that.
I think what you guys
that's
are.
the thing is,
I think you guys are giving Republicans or conservatives or whatever you want to call them, MAGA, too much of the benefit of the doubt. I think a big part of the motivation of Trump voters is they want other people to hurt.
I think you're right.
Yes. Yeah.
And
The
Donald
suffering
Trump
is
will
a feature.
hurt them.
100%.
So when people hear about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, whatever is getting cut, when they hear about it getting cut, I think a lot of people, if they're not going to say it out loud, are thinking, good, fuck those guys. Fuck those people.
Or fuck them, they're getting a handout. Or
actually, one of the best articles I've ever read on MAGA was by a writer named Adam Serwer in The Atlantic. I think it was in 2019. The cruelty is the point.
Cruelty is the point.
And that is 100% there is a segment of the American population that if they don't have a thing, they do not want anybody else to have it.
And fuck those people.
But that's exactly it. Because why are they resentful?
Because they don't have it.
And why don't they have it? Because of Republican politics.
Well, right. Yes.
I tried to walk.
I was like, not getting that at all. It was very straightforward.
But I have a question as the most moderate person here, but we're all left, but I'm the most moderate. So
Stop saying it.
No, but it's the reason there's a reason for it. So you guys, I agree with the characterization that you're laying out here of MAGA folks.
Yes.
But do you apply that to Republicans? They're non-MAGA. Do you think that non-MAGA Republicans want people to hurt? Because I agree, MAGA Republicans want to see people hurt. But do you think that regular, like, Bush Republicans are like that?
I'll give you. I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. So
do you want to?
So let me. Yeah. So I used to be a Republican. I was libertarian. I was a Bush Republican before I was a libertarian. Then I went to war and became much more. I became a Ron Paul libertarian. And I don't remember necessarily at that time wanting other people to hurt. I resented feeling like other people were getting advantages that I could not.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we have had these conversations before where I kind of think about like my old self and being like, I don't know that would have resonated with me. Where like when I was applying to college, like I was a veteran. You know, I had on paper done everything right, but I didn't apply. I didn't qualify for like any fucking grants, like none. And a lot of my peers who did not look like me qualified for all sorts of help. Now that didn't change the fact that like 9 years ago I was homeless. 9 years ago I was couch surfing. Like I had made it into Colombia. I had no debt to my name, and I was so fucking scared of going into debt. I had to drop out of Colombia, and I was couch surfing for like months, right? And like that experience, living in that at that point, and this was way after I'd become like progressive and Democrat. I remember the feeling of fucking couch surfing for months and like not knowing if I was going to have enough money to eat and being like, I don't know, man, this white privilege thing doesn't feel too privilegey right now. Like, I fully recognize the history of it, of what I've been through and all the advantages that I had. But in that moment, so when I think about the MAGA voter or the broader Republican voter, I kind of have to remind myself the emotion of being in that moment where it was like, this doesn't fucking matter. Like, it's not feeding me.
Yeah.
I think there's two pieces to this, and I think the answer is both, in my opinion. I think what Chris is talking about is exactly right. There are millions. Let's just talk about young men for a second. There are millions of young men who feel like that they are being left behind. Suicide rates for young men sky high. Drug and alcohol addiction sky high, and like why that ridiculously racist thing about Haitians eating bats or cats, not bats, was and dogs was effective is because it's the othering and trying to say these people are the problem here. But like I also think there is a problem that Republicans are telling them it's the others, and I don't think we're doing a good enough job of saying no, it's actually the Republican
Yeah, no, you
politicians that are doing
motherfuckers,
it.
it's you.
Now, and that's one thing. But over time, there has always been a strain within the Republican Party of wanting others to suffer. And I'm going to give you a few examples really fast. One, civil rights. All of the Southern Democrats went, fuck you, I'm out of here, and they became Republicans, which is why that whole thing about Democrats being the founders of the KKK is so
Oh my
ridiculous
God.
because
Every time I get that comment,
it's
I
so
want to
stupid.
throat punch somebody.
So there's that one. And then the patron saint of the Republican Party, Ronald Reagan, and his administration laughed at gay people with HIV and AIDS. Laughed. Not behind the scenes, on camera. There are press conferences of them laughing at gay men in San Francisco and New York City dying. And then in 2004, George W. Bush, one of the main reasons he won was because he wanted a ban on gay marriage. And I'm sorry, but a ban on gay marriage means I don't want you to have what I have.
Yep.
So
I
there
want
has
you to
always
hurt.
been a strain. I'm not saying that all of them, because like, you know, I don't think John McCain subscribed to some of those things, for example. I didn't think he was particularly great either, but like, you know, there's strains in Mitt Romney a little bit, you know, there's some of those that don't exist anymore, but there has always been an element of cruelty in that party.
Cruelty wasn't so much the question. It was a question of desiring to make other people suffer.
Well, no,
think
but
that
I'm
is what
saying that
cruelty
yes,
is.
I think cruelty is that.
I think, yeah, but cruelty can take on more forms than just that.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to call out if you are angry and suffering, that's okay to feel miserable and angry. And it's also natural because all of us have this in us all of the time. It is 100% natural to want to blame or hold somebody accountable for that.
Yeah.
What is happening in this country is all of these young, not just young people, especially young people, because they're struggling financially more than anything, and really everything comes back to economics.
Yep, always.
If you're struggling and you're in a painful place and you're looking for someone to blame, who are you blaming and why?
Right.
And what they're saying, this is why they say that they are importing people from Venezuelan asylums to live in 5-star fucking hotels.
It's a fucking
what
lie.
in the fuck? And like Social Security and food stamp and Medicaid, they're saying that illegal immigrants are getting Social Security benefits, and it is so fucking deranged, and it is utterly wrong. I mean, it's almost always 0% correct and just fucking wrong. It is just a lie. Occasionally they'll have a story where like one person got in a car wreck and so they got a check for whatever, and then they hang on that. But the point is, the Republican Party, they will tell you either the truth or partial truth or an outright lie so that you don't ever come knocking on their door saying, why the fuck don't I have more money? Why don't I have better health care? Why are you taking away my veterans benefits? All of those things can be laid at the foot of the Republican Party.
That's why they're not doing
not
town
refugees
halls.
and immigrants and poor people and women who need abortions.
And I feel like I'm lucky because that period that I went through where like my mental health collapsed, my finances had collapsed, I was fucking couch surfing for quite a while. I had already taken my economics 101 and 102 course that we talked about. I had already taken methods and problems of philosophical thought.
You couldn't have built an illogical argument from your situation.
Like I fucking knew that, like, well, if the Democrats were in charge, I probably wouldn't be homeless right now.
Yep.
Like,
Crazy how that works.
I probably wouldn't have had to fucking drop out of school and worry about getting hit with fucking debt, like, right away and, like, having no way to pay, right? So I feel lucky that when my life went down, that my attitude and my feelings and my politics didn't go down, because everything in my body wanted to fight and wanted an enemy, wanted to blame it on somebody.
Because like you think about it, if you flip it and somebody that's on the other side is in that scenario, I bet it doesn't go that way. No. Like they come out of that blaming others. Blaming,
and that's the easy path.
Right.
Yes. I give you a real quick person to blame. It's that guy down the street who's taking all of your money.
Yeah, that black dude that's getting, he's getting food stamps to feed his family. That works right next to you at the same fucking job site. Somehow he's the problem. Whereas, it's definitely not the Republicans who are fucking limiting you.
But I think the failure of the Democratic Party is that we haven't found a way to address that community of people. I don't think that people are inherently racist. I think some people, they're born into it and stuff, right? But like, I think a lot of the rage and anger comes again from like, no one's helping me, but people are helping them. But what do we need to do to help those people? And one thing I would say that we do not talk about enough in this country is supporting mental health. And this is something that is still, in this day and age, you think in 2025 it wouldn't be, but it is still demonized. Or if you're like, there are segments of the population that if they learned that you were in therapy, they would think less of you. And if like a president or a candidate for any office did therapy or admitted to it, they'd be done. Done. When they're in fact helping themselves. So like,
how dare you?
So this is a real problem. So how do we start to change that conversation?
I can tell you exactly how. You just start being honest about it. Like for me personally, I've been in therapy most of my life. In and out, but the last maybe 2 years has been the most successful therapy I've had, and I've made huge strides. I've had horrendous anxiety most of my life. I used to have really bad panic disorder, and I would have panic attacks like every single day for like a decade straight. Horrendous experience. And, therapy didn't work for a long time, but it just kept going and going and going, and eventually it did. But a huge part of it not working was me feeling like I had to hide what I was going through from everybody. Mm-hmm. So what I did recently, especially at like work and my job, I'd be like, hey, I can't be at this meeting because I have to go to therapy, and be straight with people who are going to, and the other side of it, I was like, maybe they're going to think less of me, maybe not, but at least I'm being honest about where I'm at.
I think more of people than they're in therapy.
Me too. I mean, of course, we do.
100%
but the country doesn't.
The country doesn't, but like, I feel like that's something that should be encouraged, right? Like
100%.
If you're somebody that's, in power, like, and you get approached and you're like, oh, somebody asks your take on therapy or like mental health. Fucking yeah! If you're not in therapy, you should be in therapy.
100%.
The brain wrangler is never bad for someone.
So there's one advantage that I have that you guys don't, and that's that as a service disabled veteran, I have free health care for life.
Sure.
As long as Trump doesn't torpedo it, which is very
very
likely to
You never
happen
know.
at this point. By the way, June 6th, we're having a protest.
Fuck yeah,
in
Dropkick
Washington,
Murphys.
D.C.
We'll be there.
Dropkick Murphys are going to be there. You get to meet some of these guys. Did not mean to pitch that.
Yes. Shameless plugs are never bad.
So during that period that I just discussed 9 years ago, like remember it pretty fucking clearly. I was also having really serious health issues, and I was going through a period like you've experienced where I was like, this is a panic attack. My fucking chest, it feels like it's caving in. I can't breathe. I've had panic attacks before. I'm like, I need to go to the VA. I need to go get checked out. I walk into the ER, I sit down with the doctor, and I'm like, hey, having a panic attack. My chest feels like it's caving in, can't breathe. And he's like, you are not having a panic attack. I'm like, nope, been here before, been on the meds. I'm having a fucking panic attack. So the doc would not fucking let me go. I ended up having a lesion in my lung, which is unexplained. Like burn pits are probably the reason. But like they checked me out. They're like, yes, you're probably stressed out. I had like just started couch surfing, but they're like, you need an X-ray. No other American gets that kind of healthcare.
No.
Nobody else no one
They say
else
here's some
in
antibiotics.
America.
Go on your way.
They'd fucking like, okay, you're having a panic attack. Maybe if you've got coverage, they'll throw you some Xanax. No one in fucking the United States has a healthcare system where they walk in, they present symptoms, and the doctor's like, I'm not taking the easy way out. I'm not letting you self-diagnose yourself. I don't care if you've been through this before. You're getting a fucking X-ray.
Yeah.
I had a cavitary lesion of some unknown, who knows, I don't know if it was a disease. I don't know if it was a foreign body. It kind of resolved on its own. But like, I was immediately brought up to an isolation room. They thought it could have been tuberculosis, which is pretty scary, by the way.
Doc Holliday.
Yeah, and like I was in an isolation room for a week while they tried to figure out what was wrong with me, and I walked away with no debt. Like I mean, I was still couch surfing and I was still fucked, but I could have been way more fucked.
You weren't even more fucked, exactly.
That's another barrier to mental health. Is a lot of people just can't afford it.
Fucking expensive, man.
Insurance usually doesn't cover this stuff. Like
schools are one way to do it.
Yeah, schools are one way to do it. But even then, it's still so stigmatized. Like it's better. I think it's better than it was. I think we could probably all agree. But it's nowhere near ideal.
But again, I think it depends on where you live, right? Because like obviously, like we live in New York. I have had colleagues be very open and upfront about it, but like Maine, not so much.
Iowa, not so much.
Probably not.
I think something that's really important to say out loud is I didn't want to ever get into therapy or mental health care at all because I felt like once you got into it, you would never get out. They would get you in and they get your copay or they get your out of pocket or they get paid. And then they say, well, you have so many things that we need to talk about. Right. Let's talk about your mom and your dad. And you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. Let's unpack everything that's ever happened to you. And so for me, early in COVID, my son was 2 and he had really bad RSV infections in the past that were like, he was in the 3% of people who got, of newborns, of babies, that got really bad RSV and his oxygen levels dropped. And so we knew he maybe had asthma, but they won't diagnose asthma until you're 5. Yeah. And they won't treat it either way. Yeah. And so we thought there might be something there. So there's some uncertainty about his respiratory health. And this is like 2018, 2019. And then COVID hits and we're working from home and we're thinking we need to keep our jobs. So we need to send our kid to daycare, even though he might have shitty lungs. He might be, Jesus. And we didn't know anything about COVID when it hit. Right. So we're like, you're washing your chip bags and you're like, is this going to kill our kid if he gets it? Yeah. And yet we still have to like leave our house and go on with our life. So that was obviously very heavy for both of us. And I saw a therapist and in 2 sessions, she did real things. It's actual science. And in 2 sessions, she went through the motion. I explained what was happening. She isolated the thing. She had me talk through it. And then she did this electronic eye therapy and she fucking fixed it. And she also fixed a large portion of my underlying anxiety, which I didn't think was possible. And I talked to her 2 times It was like over the course of 2 weeks. That was it. So even if I was paying for all of it out of pocket, it would have been maybe $200 or something like that. And I was cured. And I had no anxiety through the rest of COVID. And he eventually got it. He got 104 fever. Before he was vaccinated, he bucked it because babies are crazy. And we got a little bit lucky. COVID didn't come after kids, really. And he was over it. And then he got vaccinated. No reaction to the vaccines at all. He got his dum-dum. And we all went on with our lives. And now we're all immune and now we're all healthy. But I didn't have anxiety after June of 2020. So there was still a lot of really bad left ahead of us.
Sure.
And that whole time it was like, okay, if it did happen, what do you do next? Okay, if that happens, how do you respond? And just by allowing yourself to go through the process of talking it out, and then with this therapy thing that she did, I was like, I hate to say the word cured, but I haven't talked to a therapist since 2020,
Amazing.
and it improved my entire life.
One of the things that's super popular on the Other Dude podcasts is talking about psychedelics, and they often talk about it and have very similar experiences to what you just did. I was part of the VA's MDMA study, and I was one of the lucky cohort. I got to do it 3 times, and I have to say that it was a lovely experience. And I hope that more people are able to do it, but it didn't cure shit. It did allow me to process like a lot of shit that I went through. Weird enough for me, like none of the things that I thought about were like combat related or even really military related. I was thinking about like relationships. A lot of relationships that were fucked up post-military service were like, that's where my brain went when I was on this drug. And it didn't cure any anxiety. It didn't cure any like depression or anything, but it did help. Like it did help me process things that I didn't realize had been in the back of my head, kind of like the physical description, and it was a physical emotional experience, was when I took the drug, it felt like I was taking off armor. Like I felt like I had been carrying a metal suit of armor on my body my entire life. And when I took the drug, the emotional relief that I was feeling, I felt physically, like I felt physically lighter.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting about this is that like all of this shit works. And like, why are we as a society like penalizing people for getting the help they need to feel better? Like the we have maybe 100 years on this earth. Why would you not do the things to make that short time worth it or more enjoyable?
Yeah, and there's like, it's so crazy, right? Because like Republicans are, raw therapy so bad. But then like their first fucking inclination, if they've had a bad day at work, is to go home and crack a beer.
Right.
I was just gonna
Oh, that's
say
not
self-
therapy? Like,
Right.
yeah, self-medication. You
They
fuck.
Well, it
self-medicate
actually
right
is proven not to work.
Exactly,
by the way.
exactly.
But, yeah.
It's worse.
They self-medicate right until they take their own life because it's not fucking working.
Right.
Or they do something even worse, like burn their house down with their family inside of it. And you see these headlines and you think, what the fuck happened there? And they go, well, thoughts and prayers, and then you move right on instead of saying, maybe we should have the really messy conversation.
That guy should have been in
now,
therapy.
right when
Yeah.
we're fucking in it right now.
Well, that's the core of it. I mean, the core of this whole stigma, especially on the right with this, is that they don't want to feel vulnerable.
Right.
Right.
Therapy is vulnerability.
You'd rather die strong than
100%.
live weak.
There's some legitimacy to being afraid when it depends on your life position. But the way that I experienced it was my first interactions with therapy were while I was on active duty. And there was a consequence if you were diagnosed with anything. There was a and it's your job is your life. It's not like in the civilian world where you get fired, you change careers. Like if you are labeled as broken, especially in the unit that I was in, 3rd Infantry Division, in Infantry Battalion, Infantry Company, like if you are labeled as broken, doesn't matter if you fucking fell off a Humvee and your bone is sticking through your leg. If you're labeled as broken, you are not treated well. So I know that exact thing doesn't exist in the military, doesn't exist in the civilian world, but there are like scenarios. There are people who have a legitimate fear of facing repercussion. Cops, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Cops don't get therapy because they are afraid of the same exact things that I was afraid of. getting stuck on that desk. And when you're stuck on that desk, you're isolated. You no longer hang out with the guys. You're no longer welcome at the fucking, at the parties and shit. Like, you are no longer in the literal fucking locker room.
And it just makes it worse.
Yeah. And so there are legitimate reasons for people to be afraid. We have to, going back to last episode, we have to impose consequences on people who are perpetuating this shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Straight up, there should be no consequence for going to therapy, and there should be a consequence for saying therapy's bad.
Yep.
And you're weak for going.
Yeah. Whether
Fuck
it's
you.
Whether it's in the military, if it's your fucking commander, if you're if it's your sergeant in the NYPD, or if it's your I don't know, your fucking manager.
Yeah.
Like, who's penalizing you for taking time for therapy or family time or any of the things that make you human and whole. Like, we need to go after those people.
I mean, the crazy thing about it is, like, if you get an infection, you take an antibiotic.
Yep. Well, not if you listen to RFK.
Not RFK Jr., who, by the way, is our HHS secretary, who said, "Do not take medical advice from me," which gives you
fucking
such a
mind-boggling.
wonderful
As he
feeling.
screws up the COVID vaccine.
Did you see him take a swim in that river?
Yes, the
Yes,
bacteria-
well, I used to live in DC. That was it was in Rock Creek Park, a very dirty, and he had
dirty,
his,
dirty
niece,
place.
his niece or nephew or something.
Yeah, with
I
like
think
a
he was
6-year-old
trying to
girl.
find his brain worm. He was trying to reunite.
Well, he was about to he probably did get some more worms from that. So yeah, it's true. But anyways, it's like, we've had generations of people who've lived really sad or unfortunate lives because it was such a stigma. I mean, I could tell you from my experience, like, my dad was an alcoholic, but he became an alcoholic after I left the house. And the catalyst for it all was my grandfather dying at 66, and then my grandmother fell apart. And this was in the 90s in a small town. And so, what is somebody in that situation who all of a sudden has lost their dad, doesn't have a chance to process, like, the whole family's upset, and then his mom's literally calling him on the floor crying every single day because she's having panic attacks. So what does somebody in that position do for help? You don't ask people. He turned to alcohol. And then it became a 15-year odyssey. And the way he got through it was therapy. But, like, it's like, and there's a lot of regrets in all of this. But, like, if he had just been given, or basically if we had lived in a society that was like, this awful thing happened to you, you really should go talk to somebody, maybe none of that happens, And my father unfortunately passed away at 70, made it 4 years longer from a liver thing that they say doesn't have anything to do with the alcoholism, but, like, it's kind of hard to, So there's just so many consequences on top of consequences by not addressing it.
There's one other element to it too, is therapy is one thing, which is extraordinarily important, but for some people, medication is important as
100%.
well. And
'Cause it's all science.
So hyper stigmatized. Everybody,
Yeah.
don't give me a pill, don't give him a pill, don't be a baby and take a pill. Dude, if I didn't have medication, I don't know if I'd be here. I really don't. Like, I think there's so many people that would not be alive right now if it weren't for the medication. So
I
have
can
to-
definitively tell you that I cannot keep it together with that medication, because in order for me to get into the MDMA trial, I had to go off my meds for the first time in 8 years. And because of my job, I have a uniquely stressful job.
Yes,
A little bit.
It
And we're not
comes-
talking about the podcast, guys, by
Yeah,
the
no,
way.
this is not uniquely stressful.
Although Zach is pretty frustrating.
It comes with, real world threats. Like, a neo-Nazi showed up in my mom's house, and it took me over a year to get him locked up. That is what was going on while I was taking the MDMA therapy. So I had to go off of my meds, which meant that, like, my experimental sessions were getting delayed because of fucking court dates that ended up getting canceled or postponed or whatever. But I got to learn, after 9 years of being very successful, graduating from Columbia with honors, running my own nonprofit, working full time, all at the same time on meds. Had been running like that for years, doing all sorts of incredible shit. Went off my meds. I couldn't fucking keep my business open. I couldn't keep my nonprofit running. My relationship with my wife just completely fucking fell apart. But, like, thankfully, I understood the value of therapy, and I kept fucking going, kept going. And I was so I had heard so many of these studies, it's not just rumors, about like psychedelics curing people of PTSD. I was hoping so much that I would get that kind of relief, and I didn't. And I eventually was just like, this is not safe. I need to get back on the meds. And it took a while. It took a while for the meds to kick back in and for things to actually, and external stimuli had to also calm the fuck down. Like the Nazi actually went to jail for 6 months, which helped a lot.
Sure.
But like now I'm at it again. Now I'm running both my nonprofits. I got my business. We're doing the podcast
Hell yeah.
because of the meds. They allow me to be my best self.
And I think that's one of the scary things about RFK Jr. being the Secretary of Health and Human Services is that he is actually quite skeptical of pretty much all drugs, and he's even talked about sending people to like
Camps.
for
ADHD
mental
camps.
illness, which is insane. And when the reality is actually, as you said, sometimes it is just medication. I mean, so I had a period where my grandmother died, and then my dad died 10 months later. We had 5 days heads up that he was going to die. We had some other family stuff going on. And then I ended up being in the same situation that my dad was in because my mom is still here. Now, fortunately, my mom is not my grandmother. And if she's listening to this, she's saying, thank God you just said that. but I all of a sudden, and luckily I have a brother. My dad was the only child. But like all of a sudden, I was in the same situation that my dad was in 25 years before. My dad had actually more heads, like my grandfather had cancer. So it like took months, but my dad's thing came up and, so there were days after that, and I had a little son at the same time too. There were a couple instances, I can remember one instance in particular where I was sitting in a chair and I was just staring at the floor and I just felt like everything like was collapsing into me until I basically burst. And the thing that helped me was, I think it was probably, no, it wasn't. It was basically like a Lexapro type thing. And not that it was like a all better, because that's not really how those work, but I didn't have that anymore. So like, what is the problem with doing that? Like, how are you a lesser person because you take a drug that makes you feel better? And we've got to knock that stigma away, because a lot of guys in particular, but women too, will not go because they're terrified of the reaction, right? Just like you're saying within the military.
There's a lot about medicine that everyone doesn't understand. Like we can do a whole episode.
Right.
My soon-to-be baby, within 9 days of the time we're recording this, is a product of IVF, and I have learned so much about human reproduction.
Yep.
I thought I was well educated on this shit. I was not. One of the things I thought I also understood way back when, in 2007, when I first started seeking mental health while I was still in the Army, was I thought you take a pill and you feel better. And the doctor had told me, well, it takes a while to build up in your system, so it's going to take a little bit. So I was like, well, if it takes a while to build up in my system, I'll take 3.
Oh, God. Oh, boy.
How'd that go?
I wish I had said that to the doctor. I did not.
I feel like I got a shortcut in my head right now.
So I went from having a panic attack in the emergency room to, getting told like, hey, you're having a panic attack. Here's a prescription. And I was like, well, if it takes time to build up in the system, I might as well just take a bunch right now so it builds up. By the time I got into my car and I like drove a block and I was like, nope. It's not happening. It's not fucking happening. And so going from panic attack to I'm too fucked up to drive was not a good day for me. But it took me years of therapy to actually, like a lot of different types of therapy, psychotherapy and pharmacology, like a lot of hundreds of hours for me to even begin to understand how to identify what was going on in me, to recognize my symptoms, and to start to act to control those symptoms.
Sure.
If I couldn't control the external stimuli, at least control the symptoms.
Right.
Yeah. And it's important to know, like, I don't think any of us are endorsing medication for everybody, but there are, like, I think the challenge that we face here is that there are certain people who go, I'll never do it. And that's the hardest part of the whole thing. But medication's not for everybody. I know people who have gotten through it just therapy. It sounds like you got through it just therapy, and that's great. But
This is my.
That's your therapy.
Oh God, you're one of those.
But that's an extremely important thing because a lot of the time, especially on the right, they'll demonize it and go, "You're just throwing a pill at the problem." It's like nobody should take pills because anybody could be able to work through it if they're just strong enough. It's like some people just aren't. Some people just have a chemical imbalance that cannot be fixed by any amount of
That's me.
talking.
No willpower. No willpower fixes that.
Right, exactly.
I had to do a good amount of research on this for some family reasons recently, and the way I got to thinking about it, because I had to explain it to a kid, and the way I got to thinking about it was, you've got a nail and you need to nail it in, and you can either do that with your hands and your knuckles, or you can use a tool and do it like a fucking smart person. And the way medications ideally work is it's just brain tools, and you're giving your brain a shortcut to do something better or faster or easier. You might not have nails to hammer in for the rest of your life. You might have nails to hammer in for the rest of your life. It's all fine. It doesn't fix the problem, but it makes it so that you can get to the solution or get to an ideal state, because really we're all just trying to get to bed, right? If you can just get to fucking bed happy and wake up the next day and know that you can just deal with the tasks that are put in front of you, who fucking cares? You might eventually learn to make shit without nails, if we want to keep the metaphor going. You can do the wood on wood joints, you know?
Well, and I know
But
oh, sorry, go ahead.
But it's a tool, and it's a tool you might need for a long time, for a little bit of time, you might need forever. And that's okay. Use fucking tools when they're presented to you.
Well, there's not going to be anybody on earth who's sitting on their deathbed going, "Man, I'm so glad I just like white knuckles through these horrible moments," or "Oh, I really wish I didn't take that pill or go to therapy and feel better." You know, like, and I think we just like when you put it that way, it seems so simple, but like we've been in this world of stigmatizing it. So, well, we are actually at time. We've gone way over, but this was really great. And I would just say to anybody, who is going through something right now, that talk to a friend, talk to a relative, or look up. There's a suicide prevention hotline,
988.
988, which Trump's trying to cut a little bit of it, but
Fuck
it's
that
there.
guy.
It's there. Use it. It helps people, and I hope that this conversation helped somebody make that decision, because the other decisions are horrendously worse. Do not do that. So
Don't do a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
exactly. Well, thank you everybody for sticking with us on the longer. You've asked for longer ones, so you got a longer
You got
one
a
now.
long one.
So, and probably the next episode will be back on the screens, but we'll find another time to do this again. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week.